Hi, everyone. I chose to read El Defo this week by C.C. Bell. C.C. Bell is the author and the illustrator. She doesn't really credit a creative team. She gives credit to Kate Finch, who she says helped with the design, but she also credits herself for the design. It is published by Amulet Books, which is a division of Abrams in New York City. It's 233 pages long. It is a complete graphic novel, so it's one story from beginning to end. 233 pages, I think I said that. 34 pages for the first act. Second act goes to page 188. Third act goes to the end at 233. Acts 1 and 3 are pretty close in size. They're a little smaller than a quarter each. So Act 2 is a little bigger than a half of the book, but pretty close to what we've discussed. It is an autobiography, and it's an autobiography of C.C. Bell's childhood. Act 1 opens with an illness that causes 4-year-old C.C. Bell to get sick, and an illness causes her to get sick. An illness causes her to lose her hearing. When she starts school, everyone in her class is just like her. They're either using sign or they're using hearing aids. The world that she lives in is very calm and quiet and very familiar. Act 2 opens when her family moves to a new place and she starts a new school. Part of this new school requires her to wear this big box right here to help her hear. So this big box amplifies sound picked up from a microphone that teachers wear around their neck. And then there are cords that go up to her little bunny ears for her hearing aids. She just wants to fit in. She doesn't want really anybody to notice this big box or to notice her hearing aids. So she just tries her best to blend. And sometimes she tries to even cover the box. All of that is very new for her. So navigating those waters of adolescence, meeting new friends, letting them know how to communicate with her is not really a skill she has yet. So she ends up losing a lot of friends throughout Act Two simply because she refuses to communicate. Things like, when you speak in elongated syllables, I can't understand you, or when you speak really loud, I can't understand you. So instead of communicating her needs to her new friends, she simply just kind of gives up on friendships. She does meet about halfway through the second act. She meets a friend across the street, and her name is Martha. And Martha doesn't seem to notice her hearing aid. She doesn't seem to care. She doesn't judge her. And throughout this friendship, Cece develops this superhero in her mind. She doesn't really share it with anybody else, but she names her superhero based on herself, El Defo. And she learns throughout Act Two that this box and this microphone that her teachers have to wear give her these powers and these abilities that the other kids don't have. She can hear her teachers when they're in the hallway, when they're in the teacher's lounge, when they're in the bathroom, which makes some comedic moments. And so she develops this superhero based on these superpowers that no one knows about. Martha becomes the perfect sidekick for her, and it isn't really until the end of the book that she tells Martha that she thinks that she'd be a great sidekick. Um, Act two ends with all is lost. Her microphone for her teachers is broken. She and Martha aren't speaking. She's got a crush on a boy who she's terrified to talk to. She's Her vision is blurry and she has to get glasses. It's just she's woe is me here at the end of Act two. In Act three, she comes full circle and even says for so long she wished she could hear like all the other kids, but now she's learned that she has these superpowers and it's really fun to share those powers with the other kids. So instead of looking down on herself for being different, she celebrates her differences and recognizes that other people should as well. Her goals are clear. I said that earlier. She wants to fit in. She doesn't just want to fit in, she wants to blend. She doesn't want to stand out. There is a clear beginning, middle, and end. It does have a satisfactory resolution at the end. I think I would have changed a little bit of the middle, but again, it's an autobiography, not really my story to tell. So there's nothing wrong with it. There were some things that I didn't really think were great. Cece definitely arcs through the story. Anybody moving from age 4 to age 10 or 11 would make some big life changes. But her changes and her personal growth are really based on her abilities and her disabilities and accepting herself for who she is. And that's big. Some 10-year-olds don't even get there before they're 10. Um, so she goes from a young girl who doesn't want to stand out to somebody who touts her superpowers because of her special hearing with this device. I have marked some transitions. This book used a lot of Scott McCloud's transitions. This first one I'm going to show you is the opening of Act Two. They are moving, so they're in their old house and they're saying goodbye, and then they get in their car and then they drive away. So scene to scene, they're in different places. Well, here they're in the same place, and then they're in the car, and then they're in a different place, and then they're in a completely different city by the end. Um, there were a few action to action. I didn't point any out this time because it's like my fifth recording. There were a lot more moment to moment than there were action to action. So here's one. She's talking to her crush. This is actually her almost daydreaming, this little bubble around here. This is when she's her superhero that she created. You can see the little cape. You can see it on the other side too. But you can see how their facial expressions change as they react to one another. So it is kind of a moment to moment scene. Paige is a mini comic. I found a lot of those in here as well, so I think CC Bell did a really good job there. Here's one example. It starts, one day after school, Laura comes over, and then it shows them doing what they do, and then the scene really closes at the end with, why don't you take your friend upstairs? Well, in the next scene, they are upstairs, but it's a completely different scene, so it's not really attached to this one. And then I think that's a really good example of Paige as a mini comic. I think it has great directional flow through and through. Z pattern, left to right, up to down. Um, I did buy this on a recommendation from a friend, so I would definitely recommend it. I think the artwork is a lot of fun if you are into children's literature and graphic novels for children. This is it's a fun story. It has a lot of the elements of storytelling that we should know about as authors. Um, so I think I would recommend it for anybody into children's literature or into children's graphic novels. It's not the big action-packed graphic novel that some of the superhero or fantasy novels or graphic novels are. It was recommended to me by a friend, and it was recommended because I have two daughters. One is 15 and one is 13. Back in February, when if we were all together, if you guys were with me back then, we had comedy and we had science. Everybody in my family got the flu, and my daughter and I were quarantined at Children's Hospital for a week. And as a result of her illness, she lost her hearing. We didn't know for sure until April. It took us that long to find out this is permanent and it's not going to change. The illness actually infected her cochlear nerve on her right side, so it's pretty much a dead nerve. So there's no ear-brain connectivity for her. So it's just one side. It's still a big deal. So I bought this book based on a recommendation from a friend because just last month we picked up her hearing aids, and she wears two little behind the ear hearing aids. One is bright purple and one is teal, and one receives sound and sends it to the good ear, and the other amplifies sound. So anyway, she was 12 when this happened. She's 13 now. She's gone her whole life being able to hear, and this has been a really big adjustment for all of us. So I think that this book was a great recommendation for me, but I think it's also a great recommendation for parents or kids of anybody who's different. It doesn't have to be hearing. Anybody who's dealing with adversity in discovering differences or not being able to cope through differences. I think it's a really great tale. I will say some negative things about it though. CC Bell is a little bit older than I am. She's a kid of the 70s. And this big box right here is definitely technology of the 70s. These wires, which is what the title is made out of as well. Definitely something of the 70s, even 80s, maybe even early 90s. Today, everything is wireless and Bluetooth. So my daughter's teachers have an FM system where they have a microphone, but it's very little. It's not noticeable. It's not as big and bulky as the teachers in this book had. And my daughter doesn't have to wear a device at all because her hearing aids are Bluetooth and they're tiny. So I think that she kind of misses the mark in this book with today's kids. It's hard to resonate when you're 13 with something that your parents may have grown up with that's huge and bulky and doesn't have a remote control or Bluetooth or doesn't connect to your cell phone. So I think a better choice for this graphic novel would have been to update the technology to today. There are even things in there that date it, which she did on purpose, I guess. Like Little House on the Prairie and Hostess pies, and there are just some definitely some things that set the time. And though that's okay, it's okay to tell a tale that's 45, 50 years old. um, it doesn't necessarily resonate with the kids of today. So I think if you want to have the kids who read this go through a similar arc, you need to resonate with them, and they're not gonna feel bad for somebody who's got to wear a big box in their chest if they don't relate to it in their situation. So I'm a little disappointed there. I was also really disappointed. I think I mentioned earlier she didn't credit an editor. There are at least three songs here that I counted where she reprinted song lyrics, and there's no permissions given by publishers. One of them was a Beatles song. I've been in publishing in music and in books since the early 90s, and that's a big no-no. So I'm less than impressed that Amulet and Abrams allowed that to happen. Um, so there's that, but overall, I would recommend it. It is a fun story, and if you can get past that stuff, it's still fun. Fun fact. I told you it was an autobiography, so it's kind of cool that this is about her world. She says that she feels she is who she is today, um, because her parents taught her to live and adapt in a world of hearing. So if she'd stayed at that school where all the kids did sign, she might grow up in this muffled world, or might not know how to adapt as an adult in this muffled world where everybody signs, because not everybody signs. Um, I hear the world differently today, even than I did just a year ago, because my daughter is now deaf, and she's part of that muffled world, and some sounds are really loud for her and she can't take it, while others she can't hear at all. Um, my platform that I've built and my brand that I've built for many years is celebrating diversity, and I believe like any difference can be turned into something amazing. So I think it's a great book to celebrate, especially with young people, our differences, and that we're not all the same, and we should still be loving and accepting and kind, even if we don't understand. And it's probably better to reach out and try to understand other people than it is to pass judgment. So I think it's a great tale. It's a timeless tale. So if you are interested in it, it's El Defo by CC Bell. It was fun. So if you decide to read it, I hope you enjoy. Thanks.